Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I have an announcement to read before we get started, so it's officially on the record. That pursuant to our city charter with Mayor White out of town, our council president, Jenna Cook, is acting mayor. So in the full, effort of transparency, I'm going to run the meeting tonight. She's going to sit off to the side, be a full participant in the meeting until the times which Mayor White returns from his vacation. So that's why I'm presiding tonight. There hasn't been any coup attempt or anything like that. So I think let's call the meeting to order. And if you could please call the roll.
Volanich,
Here.
Nocera,
Here.
Rautenstrau,
Here.
Mylum,
Here.
and Council President Cook is acting mayor at this time.
Correct.
And I believe we have some executive session to take care of, so I make a motion to go into executive. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nocera. For personnel, we'll begin. Executive. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed?
Okay, we're going to executive at 6:02. I will be pausing the recording at this time.
And we are out of executive session for discussion of a particular person. Thank you. I think we're ready for the chief.
Okay.
Jim, can you hear us?
Just making sure.
Hey, Jim, can you hear us?
Yes, Sean.
Just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, if you don't have any particular order that you want to go through, what I'll do is go through everything first with salaries, and then we'll go back to salaries because that might be a little bit longer of a discussion, but it's going to be pretty straightforward on the non-salary line issues. So are you guys all set with my budget to go through it? All right, if you just notice in 2022, the budget for vehicles was 95,000. So that we're clear on why that was. Normally it would have been 90,000, but the building inspector needed a vehicle because his was terrible. Basically what that did was he was given a vehicle from the police department and we traded his 2010 Fusion. In order to make that work for the loss of trade-in, they gave me the extra 5,000 in the budget to make up for that shortfall, so that the building department got a good vehicle and you didn't have the expense of a brand new car. So that's why the 95. So it went back to 90. Normally, and you know the way I've run the budgets, you can go back to 13. These lines are really tight and they've stayed that way. I did take that 5,000 and here's where I put it. The first line, I put 2,500 extra in the pistol range. That is for ammunition, simulation ammunition, and targets, range stuff. As you know, with inflation and the way the economy has been, everything's gone through the roof. Well, ammunition is like crazy. It takes us 12 months to get it. And the price, we don't know what it's going to be until it comes in. We also have some anticipated retirements coming. And if they have to go through the academy, it's 2 weeks on the range where it's, don't quote me, but over 1,000 rounds of practice ammunition is fired during that process. So I was already taking money to make up from other lines into that line. So 2,500 went in to raise that to 8,500. I also took 1,000 and put it in office, which raised it from 13 to 14. Again, that's my, ink toners, paper, the products like folders, files, stuff like that, which, as you know, has gone through the roof. It's just crazy. So I took 1,000 of that 5, put it there. And then the final 1,500 I put in professional services. My professional service line, I'm not sure how the other departments run, but in my professional service line, basically, it pays for my state police, or I'm sorry, New York State Chiefs Association membership, my county membership, the international membership, which all total comes to like $400. And then that's where our medical and psychological evaluations are taken out of. Again, I've gotten hit with some retirements and transfers in dispatch, which we're trying to go through. We have to do psychologicals for that. And anticipation of up to 6 people could retire in 2023. It was prudent to put it in there. I went over, had to add money to that line this year, but that's why I threw another 1,500 in. You're looking about 750 to 900 between the medical and the psych alone. That's what that money goes. There's no secret things other than 3 memberships for me and organizations that I belong to that are completely job related, obviously, and the psychs and medical. That also does do our medical for our range officers have to yearly get tested for lead and fit tests and different things. And there's an expense with that too. But that's the professional services line. That went up $1,500 to $5,000. The only other couple things I wanted to mention, just to make you aware of, if we go back to equipment, which is 202, that 31,908, just so you remember why that bump was, the council had agreed to fund the officers' outer carriers for their body vests. That's replacing 5 a year. And that's where that money, that's why it's such an odd 31,908, because the council last year thought that they wanted to do that as a yearly thing, and it's a $1,908 expense, which is why that's kind of an awkward number. Prisoners, we went down, or meal money, we went down $500. Obviously, with the changes in bail and everything, it's okay, but again, if I have 6 retirements, they're also entitled to meal money when they're in the academy at school by contract. So it may go over depending on how many people retire, but that went from 45 to 4. Before I get into the real meat of everything with the salaries, if you guys will switch over to the animal warden, which is after fire, page 12. Salaries was 20,000. In this budget, I bumped it to 2140. He makes $19 an hour, 20 hours a week. He hasn't had a raise in 6 years. The matrons make $20 an hour. I know with the part-time summer help employees with the raises that they were given, that I thought it only fair that he at least make what the matrons make, which was a raise from $19 to $20. It's $1,000 and $1,040 for the year to bump him from $19 to $20. So that was the only other change between auxiliary and the animal warden.
Excuse me, Chief, is the animal warden just animal warden? It's not a,
It's actually
actually
DCO,
dogs.
it's actually just dogs.
just, yeah. it
So
is
he's just dogs, yes.
But he's not also a cop. This isn't like
No.
an extra.
Nope, nope. Part-time, no benefits, 20 hours a week, he's flexible.
See him driving around a lot too.
Yeah. You know, part of the rule is you can be flexible, but I want 1 evening and 1 weekend day. So you'll see him. I want them to be able to go to people's houses after hours when they're done with work to be able to follow up. And I also, especially in the summer, I wanted 1 day on the weekend. Was a lot more when dogs weren't allowed in the park. Now that they are, it's not as big a problem, but it used to be a huge problem on the weekends with the parks. Going from there, so.
Acting Council President Mylan, may I ask a question? So Chief, on October 1st, the mayor submits his budget to the council. And then obviously it included salaries and all that and stuff. And on October 7th, Assemblyman Conrad announced some funding for the police department. Obviously, there were no amendments made to your budget line following the announcement of those funding. Included in that was a vehicle for Ford Expedition, which is a SAM grant. Now, this question more so is for Bill. We probably won't see the money for that grant until 2024 or 5. Okay. I just want.
So, and I would not purchase that until, I believe the way it is though, we have to purchase it, we upfront the money, but it would be like, that isn't something we're looking at next week until we know everything's finalized, everything's close and that you
When we
need
get
it.
the final letter, I wouldn't even plan on getting it. So, I mean, Conrad's in an election. If he doesn't win, you know, I'd see him.
Understood.
And just for, so that you know why that didn't transfer to any line. So back in 2010, an upgrade done to the dispatch centers and portable radios. And I hate to tell people this, the central dispatch is still okay. But at the time, there was two technologies. And the easiest way to tell you is it was like the old days with the tapes. There was VHS and beta. And through no one's fault, basically what happened was beta. And everybody went VHS. And they're great radios, but it ended up being more and more when other departments replaced it, did other things. The portable radios, you could not talk to other departments, including North Tonawanda, which they assist us, we assist them all the time. At the time when they bonded that as a complete project, it was in the $125,000 range. What I started doing when this went, that it was VHS that you needed, through grants, through different security things, through Stone Garden federal grants, I started replacing portable radios, which were $1,800 a piece. So instead of having to come up with 30 of them overnight, we ended up getting through all this stuff, 18 of them replaced already. This grant provides the other 12 to get the entire department up to the technology that they can speak with everyone else. Dispatch, for lack of a better way, is just like your house computer. That's what's running. There's 15 computers in there, but they're just computers. They're from 2010. The company that supports the software updates and everything is starting to say, you're getting close. And, you know, it's a hard thing because it could last a day. It could last 5 years. There's 3 of them. There's 2 here because we have the main one through the federal government. We had the second one done that if there was ever it was for a huge, you know, incident. If we ever had a train derailment with a chlorine car or, you know, something monstrous that you wanted an individual dispatcher to be able to just handle that call. The October storm again, where you just had inundated calls and services, you could set up that dispatch. Then the third one is at 44 William. In case City Hall goes down, we can do a continuation of operations, and that is everything gets switched right over and dispatch becomes at 44 William. Part of that grant, $46,000, is to switch all 3 of those over. So at the end of the day, after this grant, with the part of the Ford Expedition, that's what, when they asked what our wish list was, I kept calling it in the press conference. It's not sexy. I probably shouldn't have said that. It probably should have been not glamorous, because it's kind of like putting a new sewer line in. Nobody really sees it until there's, and this is the same thing. Nobody will notice anything until 911 doesn't go through. Or so that's where it went, but it didn't replace anything in my budget because it wasn't ever in the budget. And it was something that by doing it this way, we kept it out of having to come here and saying, we need to bond this and we need to bond it now. So I thought it was a win-win for everybody. So anyway, that's just why after this grant get announced, there isn't a big cut in some line because it was never budgeted for it. So that's where that came from. Okay. So just to give you a couple things. So in this budget, with what you folks agreed to with the school resource officer. So for budgeted for 22, we had 28 police officers counting me. When we agreed to go to the school resource officer, which the school funds half of, we hired a new officer, which meant we went to 29. So 29 had to go into this budget. It wasn't an added person. It is an added person, but it's not an added new person to cover anything else other than the school resource officer that we all agreed was important and that we do get reimbursed half for. So that you know, there are 7 people in the police department that still have health insurance in retirement. That goes till the end of this contract, which is the end of 23. Depending on the changes, whatever the council and the mayor decide, if big changes come to health insurance, we could lose 7 police officers in 2023. So that would be worst case scenario, but that's out there. We could never handle that. I couldn't hire them. I couldn't train them. By law, we have to have a field training officer with them. We couldn't do this. I have a letter from an officer who hits his 20 years in October and has said he is retiring as soon as he can. Now, you can't hold him to that. But I have one already that says he is going to let you know. So in this budget, there is 30 police officers, which would hire a new person in the January academy. The reason I wanted to do that is because the academy will go till mid-June. Then they come out and there's 12 weeks of field training, which puts it to the 2nd to 3rd week of September, depending on days off. They get breathalyzer rater, blah, blah, blah. So basically, I'll have a full police officer 2 weeks early before this person goes. And the reason that I think it's vital is because, again, there's that cloud hanging over us of, depending on where that goes, you could have 6 more people walk out the door. And if we wait till August, which would be the next academy, they're not even out of the academy till January. You're running 6 people down with no hope, you'd have to break it up to 3. I don't know how you would do it.
Can we do it with 5 down?
No,
I mean,
and that's because, so with anticipation of it, I'm here to ask you, even though there's now 30 in this, I would ask that if the council deemed appropriate, because of the information we have with people retiring or could retire or anything else, that we actually hire 2 for January. Again, there's no guarantees. There doesn't, but
So that would be 31 or 30.
it would go to 30 then. Because again, no, it would be 31.
Yeah.
Because it's 29 is with it. There's 30 in this budget. And I would say 31. One is definitely retiring in October. And it looks like there's a possibility. There's another officer that can retire at that same time. That indications are he probably is going. A third officer that looks like he may for sure be going. And then that leaves 3 others that could go.
Chief, what's the starting salary for an officer?
I have it on my sheet. Oh, I don't. So I did throw the contract in here. I think I just have police officer 1.
Is that first year?
It would be academy.
Oh,
It's academy because at 20 weeks. So sorry, I thought I threw my contract in here. I guess I didn't bring it.
No, it's possible,
No, it's not.
It is
It wouldn't be
possible.
because he
We've
doesn't
done it
have it.
before,
That's part of it.
but you have to find someone that is going to do the residency, and that's almost, well, unless we decide not to have residency.
The academy rate is real, it's like $20 an hour. So that would go through June, and then first year patrol officer. If you gave me a minute to get the contract, I put it in here. I must have left it.
Don't worry about
Under the envelope. But yeah, it's a reduced rate in the academy, and then their first 160 hours of field training are still part of the academy. So it's basically like July when they go to first year patrolman, police officer.
Which is
Which is-
67,475.
Yes,
So ballpark academy is supposed to fire around 50.
probably less than that, right?
And that would be,
47 sticks in my head for some reason.
yeah,
That's the number that
I agree.
keeps.
So that would be the cost of 3 new ones would be 47 times 3. Or whatever.
But it'd
the
be
number is.
2.
Right,
'Cause you've
we
already hired
said-
one.
Right.
So 1's already in here because we already hired him. He's already in this at 29. But you had to add it because we hired, he wasn't in the 22 budget, and we hired him in August because we started the school resource officer in
Right.
September.
But
So
you're,
that's built in. I'd be asking for 2 at that rate.
you'd
replace.
be asking in addition to what we budgeted for 2 more.
No, so in addition to what's on this paper would
Yeah,
be one
sorry.
more,
Would be one more.
because there's one more in with what I budgeted.
And that would be ballpark 47. Again, that will be the numbers.
The budget has the extra, right? You're not saying there's one more on top of this.
Chief, do you want me to look to see the
And the starting salary is somewhere around 46.
Yeah, it's low.
I mean, would the overtime that you may incur if even half of the eligible people retire be outrageously greater than the, perhaps 3? I'm just trying to project.
See that, yes, probably, but it's hard to project, but I guess my emphasis is that we can't even do it if there are that many people
Yeah,
weren't here. We couldn't do it.
I mean, it just says that 2 is not a,
But I realize that people are under budget constraints, and then God forbid, what happens if 2 of them decide not to go, and then all of a sudden you're looking at me saying, what happened? I'm confident as I can be
sure.
that for sure 2 are probably going, and in all likelihood 3. And again, depending on that health insurance, they'll have to retire before the end of 23, because that's when the new contract kicks in. And if the contract isn't settled by then, they're retroactive. So if you don't have a settled contract and they feel any inclination that things aren't going the way they like, they will retire. My department, for whatever reason, we have a lot of the people that stayed that didn't retire. I know the other departments just, Bill, like crazy, how many we have? We have more than everybody in
Seven's
nurses.
the most,
Which was great that meant people stayed, but the bad part is they could all be gone. So if you look at January of 22, the academy rate day afternoon is, sorry, $19.25 an hour. So it doesn't list the salary out. So that'd be your first 20 weeks would be at
yeah, it's
19.
about 41, but it's only about 6 months. Plus the extras. I think it was like 54, 55 for starting.
It's up to like 65 for the year.
With all the extras, right?
Yeah. So that was the big thing in this budget, to try to explain where we're at, what happened recently that has me here asking that it probably should even be one more. I don't know if you have any questions for me. I know it was a lot. I can try to explain those numbers again if you have any questions to just verify so you're all on the same page.
How does your eligibility list?
I have 2 city residents on the list right now, so I could go off the county list. I could either hire one of those 2, or I could ask for the county list.
but that would be residents off the county list. I mean, because we have a boatload of non-residents.
No, then we could contingent on them moving to the city.
Mhm. Wouldn't,
So they live in the city, they've gotten to the city list that they wanted to be.
How long would they have to move into the city? If you hired off the company list?
isn't that a state
that's-
policy?
the-
I mean,
The mayor has the right to, I believe, waive that and do that. So that would be a negotiation. And, my initial inkling would be, 6 months you have to move in. But you'd want to be flexible. I mean, if you were in the middle of closing on a house and it's going to be 7 months, you're going to say you got to rent an apartment for a month. But you know what I mean? I hate to, you would have a hard number. But I don't think it would be a drop dead number to say if it's not by that date.
And that's what I'm asking, is there some flexibility? If somebody can do it, this is the process of doing it. There's not a hard, no.
No, and you can tell who's serious or who
Right.
would be stringing you along, so to speak. So You know, if you look at the overtime a little bit, sorry, that's it. Just, I mean, you know that I'm down a full-time dispatcher and 2 part-time dispatchers. So while it's costing me overtime, in reality, what's costing me in the overtime line, you're making up in the salary line because there's a full-time dispatcher and 2 part-times that's budgeted 32 hours a week that aren't being utilized right now. On a positive note, I did have 2 interviews today and they went pretty well. Wait to hear, see how that went, but we made some progress. We had to go to the non-county list. Nobody on the last canvas from the city list even responded that they were interested. And in fact, on the whole county list, we only got 2 people that were interested for a full-time position. But this is a countywide problem with dispatch. The one person we had in today is already interviewed with Orchard Park. And there was one more. That to Pew maybe, but I mean, it's just everybody is in the same boat with the dispatching world. It's a pretty high stress job. Hours aren't the greatest. That's where we're at, but dispatch has really hurt me. And then again, you know, we've had an officer on long-term injury. I was down to 2 officers from the beginning of the year that we had in the academy. I've been pretty much down 3 officers this entire year. Then you had Canal Fest alone was a $22,000 hit. Now, last 2 years, we haven't paid anything because Canal Fest wasn't there. We had an extra cut. My department alone was $22,000 for Canal Fest. Take that number off and I'm doing fantastic.
You ever get that back?
Yeah, did we ever get paid out of that?
No.
So.
Not from Corky, I mean from the Canal Fest Corporation.
did
How
we-
they
got it,
Like 0 money when it started.
Have we invoiced them?
Yeah, from what I hear, they don't have it.
So question on the eligibility list. They're eligible, but that means they still have to go through the police academy. They pass
Yeah.
the test, but they still have to go through the academy, go through that process. Could be 6 to 8 months out, plus the training,
Yes.
which is considerably longer than.
Right, so it's not an easy part of the Police Reform Act and everything they've done, even though we've always done it, is they have to have a psychological exam. And excuse me, the background check is 30 pages long. So even when I get the green light, we interview and we start going through this process, I need a month, easy,
Just
of lead time just to do the things that we're required to do before we can offer the job. And while it's not, whoa, geez, it's October. Well, you know, you hit Christmas holiday and all of a sudden the academy starts. It's usually Martin Luther King Day. So it's the 3rd Monday of January is usually the start date.
And so beginning to end, best case scenario, you get them in the academy on January 1st, when are they hitting the ground running?
And alone by themselves is between the 2nd and 3rd week of September.
And when the new campus opens up, we're gonna stick with 2 resource officers, is that correct?
Yes,
One at that campus, one at high school. middle school?
yes, one will go next year, one will go to Fletcher and one will go, by all accounts that I've had. It's been fantastic. I know the staff has been ecstatic about it. The feedback from the parents, I think, has been fantastic. Now, I'm a little spoiled, I guess, because I've come from the juvenile world. There's people that have different tracks on how to go. My whole earlier career was juvenile. That's where I wanted to be. So that was a priority for me from day one, was to focus on the schools. I think it's just off the charts important on what we do. I think we led the way the other communities did. There was some backlash, you know, when it was the defund the police and the school resource officer. And a lot of that has to do with the person. You know, Dr. Oldenburg loves to say you need, when we talk about this in press conferences and different things, you got to have the right person at the right place at the right time. And we hit that with both these officers. They're just totally invested. The way they get into the schools, the way they're at the Halloween nights, they're at the open houses, you know, they're doing all that. It's not a, geez, I'm getting close to the end of my career and I'm going to go get a Monday through Friday job and be up there. You got to be all in, you got to be invested in order for it to work. right person, right place, right time. And we've been blessed with the two that took it.
They're very visible. There's not a damn in one of those schools that I don't see one or both of them. So it's nice, and the kids respond to them, so it's good. So,
And once they go to one campus with Fletcher School, I think it is going to be just a great thing. And then Dave's probably got a little bit more knowledge with this, the school plans and all the safety plans that they have to come up with to have an experienced officer to help them with that. All these plans are going to have to be redone for the new school, the configuration, all your emergencies and just, it's just mounds of planning that have to go into this. And there'll just be tremendous resources for that part of it.
mhm.
So the resource officers too, they're, I mean, obviously their job circles around the school year. Off school year, summer time, I mean, are they utilized in other places?
Right, so
When it's busier during the summer, you can use them for a little more patrol or parks or places where you need a little more focus.
So what we did as part of that is because they get that schedule during the week or during the school year, from July 1st to August 30th, the school resource officer was placed on steady 3 to 11s in patrol. So we didn't rotate like the other ones because that's where we're busier on afternoons. However, with the things he got into, we started that junior police academy, which was the first 2 weeks of July that he ran. So we lost that. You also want him to take his vacation then, because obviously if he takes it during the school year, one, he's not in the school, and two, we're replacing it with another officer because that's the commitment and the agreement we have.
Right.
So they have all that built up time off. So it doesn't end up being as big of a block as you would think, but that is where we put them. Now, my plan with the second one, now that this is new, was going to be more of a community relations police officer. And my thought was, along with that junior police academy, that again, the feedback I've gotten from that has been fantastic, is I would like that officer getting involved in the events of like the pop-up play dates. Or my thought was to have him at Kohler Pool quite a bit, where there's a ton of kids there, and just interacting and being a positive role model, being that community relations person that we haven't had. If the other SRO is off on that 3 to 11s, would we put him in there? Absolutely. The week of Canal Fest, would he be on 3 to 11s in a patrol car? Absolutely. But my thought was we could do so much more in the summer of the special events with the kids to keep them engaged and to give them that role model and that trusted adult that someday later they may go to, that prevents.
And that's one of the things we talked about because you're from, so that's actually kind of taking those recommendations and putting them out there and utilizing.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes, so that's where I'd gone, but again, depending on days off and staffing and everything else, it's going to be today you're in a car and you're on 3 to 11. But I just thought, again, seeing all those kids over at the pool, and then even they're doing great jobs with these pop-up play dates and fishing derbies and whatever the event is, to have them have the flexibility to be able to say, hey, you're going to go up there and spend time with the kids and have the officer that wants to be there. It's one thing to just say, today your assignment's to go up there. It's another to have somebody who wants to be up there and the impact they can make.
Thank you, Chief. Does anybody else have any questions? Good. We're on our next question.
Just don't want you to kick me and say I forgot to say something. Good?
Yeah.
Okay, and as always, if you do come up with a question, email me and
I have a side question. When does that junior, who's that for? Like what grade levels? Like,
he does it for middle school.
Yeah.
They do a little application process. The kids are committed. It's really a cool thing. He gets 12, I think, this year,
wow.
but he makes them do calisthenics. They do it in the
No.
morning and then
Eighth
they're,
graders?
I think so,
I think
yeah.
it's eighth graders.
Eighth graders.
And then he, the last day they got to do a run up to the Grand Island Bridge, and they get to see a lot of things, and it's really, we have a nice little ceremony at the end that if you can make is really kind of cool. They come in, they march, they,
Yeah, they
Is it on the boat? Is it kids going into eighth,
They-
kids going out of eighth? You know, I mean.
I think it was going out of,
Going out.
I think it
So
was
going
going
into
out,
high school.
yeah.
Yes, the March, they.
Yeah.
Like they're in the dip.
No kidding.
Yeah, they got a,
Is
they
it
get a uniform
uniform?
shirt with a hat that they
Like a
have to wear
golf
every
shirt,
day.
khakis and-
Really?
And they really take it, but he takes them on a lot of nice, they got a backstage tour of the Bills Stadium. Got to see the holding cells and different things like, I was like, I want to go.
Yeah,
I never saw that.
That's awesome.
He takes them up to the holding center on a day. It's even a neat kind of story. They take the kids to lunch and they went over to Joey's place for the one day and he had a special menu made up and it said special for the Tonawanda Junior Police Academy. And they thought that that was like the neatest thing in the world, that they got their own menu, that chicken fingers or I think it's spaghetti and a meatball, but you know, or mac and cheese, I don't know, but they thought that was what was the best thing of the whole thing. We had a menu in our honor. It's nice. But it does a fantastic job. And the kids just rave about the parents come up to us afterwards and just,
Say that's really awesome.
yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. That went a lot longer than I thought it was gonna.
Yeah, so we have about 10 minutes before the building inspector, so let's get 10 minutes. Michael, what you got?
Sit in the rec director and just like flop it.
You have to follow.
Oh, I got him, dude. I got him.
I wish we could put a caveat in that.
I'm gonna,
Or any
Well-
better use of efficiency. So,
And
Sean, can you stop the mute on that side?
I'm gonna mute it on this side?
Yeah, I'm gonna pause the recording.
Yes, good idea. Pause the recording.
So it is 7 o'clock and we have a building inspector here, so why don't we get started?
All right, my budget is fairly easy as it is every year. The only real change this year besides salaries is I added money in to get a second set of code books and 2 copies of the electrical code. It doesn't, believe it or not, doesn't come inside of code books. No, separate. Yeah. It is 3620.
It's page 13.
There's like 3 lines on it.
I couldn't find the one that was all marked up, so that's why I was printing. Okay.
Got it.
4. Oh, different 13. 29. Yeah, Sarah line is just the standard 1.5, 1.5 for everybody. Contractually obligated stuff.
So there's a significant decrease in vehicle maintenance.
There is.
Is that tied
Is
to
it
the?
related to what
So,
the chief was talking about,
Yep.
the vehicle,
yeah,
right?
but with the offset of cost of getting his.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I must have. It's all good. Yeah, no, with the basically me buying the chief's vehicle from the police department. That's that.
Okay.
Then it's down to the standard $700.
And the zombie grant that went away.
That is done.
It's done.
We've got some stuff that is going past the end date of the loan, or not the loan of the program, but nothing that we're gonna need to bill or anything after that. They basically said, here's the rest of the money, this is what we're gonna do, and we'll call you with some checkups.
So to me, if I'm reading this right, your actual overall budget is about $40,000 less than it was last year.
Yes. Which is the vehicle and the zombie stuff.
But the zombies corresponding revenue was down also.
Right.
Yeah.
And the vehicle was, right, that was the help, and that was what we had the money over the chief's line too, to make sure we have the car.
It's pretty straightforward.
What was the revenue from the zombie grant approximately?
We budgeted for 30, we actually had 120. which you allocated those for during the year.
Anybody have any questions?
Is that not returned from some other source? Zombie grant?
The zombie grant was remember the housing crisis, 2008, 2010? The New York State Attorney General sued a whole bunch of banks.
Yes.
This came out of that pot. They gave each, this was actually our second round of zombie funding. The first one, we got 100. Okay,
I remember.
I think it was about 100 to do a bunch of different stuff. This time it was, I think on paper, 150. I have to look at the stuff and basically it funded Joel. It got us some, well, you got Joel computer. It got Joel, it's getting the potential plumbing inspector whenever that happens. I have a computer for him now. Because of it, some associated iPads, some ArcGIS software. It was a Jason Knight field day.
But what kind of reduction in zombie homes did it?
It's not, it was never necessarily, well, so the zombie program was never necessarily about reduction of zombies. It was about identifying them,
An expedited
And-
process.
putting them. Probably, okay, so one of the parts of the zombie program was we actually funded Western New York Law Center. The Law Center sent out on our behalf with, it's since expired, but it's like Rick's name on the top of it. It was a city official letterhead. If you had Liz pendants, the notice for foreclosure, here's a letter. We are not a scam program. We are a real program. We don't cost you anything. Here's how you stay in your home. Contact us. It's free. Because most people don't realize that a standard foreclosure takes about 3 years.
Yeah.
So they get their first notice of foreclosure and they jump ship. Then all of a sudden, the bank hasn't finished their paperwork. So the property owner is still technically legally responsible for it, but because there's a notice of foreclosure on it, that they filed the action, they don't have legal right to the property. So it puts the home into this limbo area where the term zombie came up. It's a bank-owned property that hasn't been fully transferred yet.
To extent it was to kind of help these people get back into their
Yeah.
homes.
Sometimes, since Zombie 1.0, the program's actually expanded. The city is actually a founding member of the regional Erie County zombie program. We contributed part of the zombie funds towards a Stay in Your Home campaign, which is actually facilitated by the Western New York Law Center as part of the county-wide zombie initiative, hosted by Nikki Kearns. And it's a really good program. Basically, it's all information. Like, hey, if you get this notice, don't just, exit your home. Don't just vacate your home. These are what your legal rights are. This is what they can do. This is what they can't do. It was actually a really good program. I can't tell you exactly how many people took advantage of it because of legal stuff. But I can tell you that I can tell you that at our peak, we were well over 100. We were down under 100 for a while. Then with them reopening courts, reopening foreclosures and everything like that, we're back up to just over 100. But some of the stuff that the Western New York Law Center has done on a state level has changed a lot of the procedure. Like now, when you foreclose on a home, you are required to actually put who the servicer is, because that was always the big chase. Who actually owns it? Who's the person that's in charge of it? Because as a result of the first zombie grant, there's a set of rules that these banks have to play with. You are to maintain the property, but they aren't necessarily required to improve the property. They have to make sure the property is secured. Like all these things. Like if it has a basement, they can't turn the power off anymore. They used to be able to do that. That's where we ended up with these two. Like we had one on Grant Street that was like mold in it to like shag carpeting. You can't do any of that stuff anymore. Now, like exactly when you file with the state, you actually put on there, here, this is us, this is what the servicer is. Instead of me having to dig through the Department of Financial Services website and try and figure that out. So it's been a really good thing. We've learned a lot. I think we're like 110 right now, and hopefully it doesn't get worse from there, because we are one of the leaders in the 90-day pre foreclosure information that the Western Law Center got through their contacts at the DFS. I think they're talking 200 to 300 for the 14150. So I know that covers the town as well.
Yeah.
And those, you have to understand with that, these are pre foreclosures. These are people that haven't done a loan mod. They may be at this point, they can still sell. This is just a, hey, you're late on your mortgage. You're 90 days or more late on the mortgage. So they haven't been issued their foreclosure notice, which is basically locks them into basically that whole process.
Mhm.
They can still sell the house. They can still, potentially get caught up with things. So it's pre foreclosure. There is a big number, but it may not actually be the end number.
Right.
So our current list is a perfect example. Out of we'll just call it a flat 100 houses that are in my database, or as vacant and abandoned, vacant, zombie, and abandoned. I think there's 5 or 10 that actually meet the criteria of zombie home.
Unoccupied.
Well, occupied or unoccupied doesn't matter. It is bank owned, in process. So it's in that no man's land between first notice of foreclosure and the bank actually finishing the foreclosure, evicting them, and actually getting the house back on the market. Most banks aren't in the market to own property. There's actually one that actually took it upon themselves after the housing crisis to actually convert a vast majority of their foreclosures into rentals. I don't know how that's working out for them. They've got like 2 in the city, and they're rather annoying. But okay, we'll see what happens with round 3.
Good info. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Does anybody have any additional questions?
What were the subscriptions that went up?
So that's the code books. That is code classes. That's like a set of code books is about $1,000. The 2017 NEC, I thought it was two something.
Okay.
Let's see.
Books and manuals.
And now with having a full-time code enforcement, I'm gonna actually, it's nice to have him. I have my set of books that were paid for by the state. So amongst everything else that's going on, the state used to actually give every municipality, every registered code enforcement individual a set of books. They don't do that anymore. So I actually had to buy the set of books that I have down there, and they gave us access to the online version of it. Is it here? So that's why I currently don't have the electrical inspector uses his own home version of the 2017 NEC, National Electric Code. So I don't have an actual official city of Tonawanda copy of it.
Thank you.
No problem. I'm hoping to be able to get that number down, because I had some creative ideas, but I'm just talking to Joel.
Is the online version subscription only to building inspectors, or is that?
It is subscription to anybody that wants it. If you're a member, you can get it cheaper, and that's what I'm actually going to pursue. After talking with Joel today, we were sharing my online version that I have on one of the iPads from the first zombie grant.
Sure.
So it's like, I said, my login here, you do that, I do this, I got hard copies, we play that game. I'm looking to see what is actually going to cost.
Yeah, an additional license.
I know it's an annual fee, but I think there's a way to actually maybe get that number slightly lower. So I haven't still need hard copies of the NEC because the NFPA is fun to deal with.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Really appreciate it.
Sarah.
Welcome.
Well, I think our published, the next published time is 8 o'clock.
Yes.
So I guess we're gonna take a break until 8. Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want to use this time now to, anybody has any proposals, discussion, questions, or anything about what's already been? Or is this still everybody speaking with me? It's a lot of info. Add the two on the map, or-
From what we've had so far, I think both the chiefs have made some compelling arguments where I mean, they're pretty tight and there's a lot of preparation for what we have for next year. So far, it seems pretty responsible. I'm not sure where there's room. I'd love to see where there's some opportunity. Still an increase and amount coming out of the general fund, so you'd like to reduce that burden on the taxpayers as much as possible, but it's huge opportunities at this point. Yeah. We've always said in the past, you're not gonna get it by cutting paper and pencils.
Bill, I had this written down just for a quick. How much has the city received so far from the interim foreclosures for the year? Do you know approximately? What the-
Yeah, I mean, of the couple million we had out, we probably received, we're down to $1 million, so probably clean up about 700.
And then what do you think a reasonable anticipation for what we'll get this year? Our
Well, the other
Mike-
mill, right, because we're gonna sell everything, so assuming it all goes through and we don't have anyone to pay for us, the other ways out. Conceivably, we'll get the rest of it, assuming the foreclosure action takes place, depending on what Mike does.
And Mike and Brittany are continually working on that, correct?
To the best of my knowledge.
Yes.
They have a date.
I don't
The
think-
stub searches have been finished. I'm told that in the next month, the first set of letters will go out, so that will put it at Christmas time. by the time we do. I think they're estimating March, April. That will go back from.
So it's like the letter goes out and then a follow-up and then.
Yeah, that's be my first one, but I'm
Right.
thinking of seeing 2 or 3 letters after we all the registered to all of the lien holders. So the stub search told them who the actual owners and the bank interests and the people that might have a mechanics lien on the house or, you know, a roofing loan or.
Sure.
So it's gonna identify all of them and they all have to be notified legally and given a chance to
Right.
weigh in and either perfect their liens or make sure that we account for them, but. So it's gonna be a lot of letters going out the next month, depending on what Mike and Brittany's schedule are. And we'll be involved in that, and then I think there's so many days they have to wait, and they set up the second round. And then we actually have to go to court, and we have to get time in court, they have the judge actually transfer the properties to us, and then we have to have an auction, so it's gonna be out there a little bit, but I would imagine by the time. We'll probably pick up half of that in payments, and the other half will go when we have the auction, so.
No, my question is that can't be looked at revenue, correct? Does that go?
Well, there's revenue in the budget, the mayor put in, he kept it at 600 for next year also. I mean, when you look at 600, it's 400 is what we always get.
Right,
You know, and the corresponding expense to that is the 435 we take out on page 20. At 435, that's the out. So the 400 and the 435 is pretty much the 35 is what keeps adding up in the foreclosure auction, so.
Right.
We're only actually going up 200 on that, on what we normally would receive. And I dropped it back to 4, and the mayor wanted me to put it back to 6 because of the foreclosure will be coming in then, so. It's his intention that the 6 was a good number for that, and it probably will be. Yeah, there's a little bit of adjustments we have to do for this year, but I think we'll hit our 6 this year without a problem. Especially the next round of letters will be much more serious, and people will finally go out, get the refinancing in their homes and clear up those. There's still some significant. I mean, some of the ones, 230 that we got was the building we sold when they sold Still Buick. Right, so we, that wasn't because the guy was worried about foreclosure, it's because he was selling and he couldn't sell without paying, so we're getting some of that. The next round of letters should get us another really healthy hit, and then next year we'll have the remainder, and if we net 200 out of the foreclosure on top of what we normally flow through, that would be about right.
In our anticipated land sales.
That
Spalding
That
is-
again, we looked at Spalding, the mayor calculated, he's involved with the council president on land sales, and their estimation was 400 was conservative because we still have Karuba, this property over on Broad Street, all that talk's going on. So even though we figured the 4 seemed about right, we usually budget 100, so it's really like 300 more. His estimation from who he's been talking to and what we've been talking to, that still seems it's a good number. So, and I had no argument. I don't know the ins and the outs of what the mayor's office is doing, but it seemed reasonable with that number.
In Spalding is, well,
So the next 3 properties and the acre attached to Silver Crane, in addition to what we see with Karuba and or anything else the mayor is talking to developers about that I'm not aware of. The number didn't seem, we weren't going pie in the sky. It seemed like that number was extremely doable. I would say in 24, that number will drop back down. So again, it's budgeting a little bit of one shots unless we think there's a lot more land after that, but we'll have more property on the tax rolls, so that will make up for the one shot going away. That was the theory in that. And I had no argument with the mayor when he made that contention. It seemed to make sense. We've done that in the past.
so is it safe to say that a chunk of what's in here is because we could have been premature last year saying that Spalding was gonna close by the end of this fiscal year?
We only budgeted 100 last year, right, for the slide
I
sales?
thought it was 6.
No, 6 was the delinquent tax revenue. That's probably.
We're not facing a shortfall.
City land sales, I thought was, we actually had the budget go up, I thought, but I had to find it. We were higher because of the cat sale, then we went down last year. Because we didn't have the sales and we didn't want to guess at it. And I'm sorry, I'll find it here. Sale of certain property was budgeted at 100,022. And it was budgeted 423 because of the additional sales that we have on contract and we're trying to close.
Okay.
The 600
Yeah,
was the
that's right.
200 addition of the 4 that was a foreclosure.
Okay. I was remembering
And
a different line.
We did not increase by significant amounts our interest and penalties, which honestly, when we finally get the foreclosure payments, it's gonna include an awful lot of interest and penalties. So we were conservative in those numbers. And again, the mayor calculated that, and I didn't have any argument.
Thank you. Anybody else, council wise, any thoughts, concerns, problems? Yes.
For the talk I gave last week, a lot of the expenses that went up strictly were our interest.
Mhm.
Our interest went up 300,000. And our pension liability, which is given to us by the state based on actuarial amounts, which I don't even want to guess what the wizards down at Albany do with that. Which is the stock market and its reduction. They're trying to minimize the hit, but that went up 300,000. And it will probably go up again next year because they have to, unless the market goes up significantly to offset they have to have that in there. So 600,000 of the expenses that went up this year was numbers we had absolutely nothing we could do about. And then, of course, gasoline going up.
And
And a lot of
contractual,
those are fixed. And then
Contracts,
contractual
right.
salaries. There wasn't a lot of ads that were not required. Very little was put in that wasn't there in the past that's contractually required or been proven out that they definitely spend it, like electricity, like water. like-
any validity in discussing increasing any fees to increase our revenues, any treasurer's fees?
That would have to be the mayor. You can't touch the.
My building permit fees are going up. We talked about it last year, I'm actually make sure it happens this year.
Okay.
Did we
Is
actually
it just
test that?
building permit? It's not
It's
road
gonna be
cut?
building, plumbing, water.
Okay.
So,
Any road cutting fees going up or anything like that? Is it just?
The road cutting fees that I get probably isn't gonna be anything significant. That I'm gonna office and talk with Joe, figure out, we're cheap. In the grand scheme of things, asphalt went up, because oil's up. But it's good. There's places I ain't done. Extra funds.
Well, maybe,
That should, generally speaking, my currently the way it's set up, my permits and my licenses and all that cover everything, but historically it was about 30 grand. With adding Joel, it's gotten up to about 60. We had another 30 in that. I should be able to cover that and then some.
But that would be an area where we don't get crazy with revenue until we see it, when we budget the following year. If we do get that money, we can make a budget adjustments during the year to account for it, if we're actually seeing those skyrocket. For all we know, that we could see building costs go up and people stop doing additions and stop getting permits because they can't afford it.
Did raise rep fees last year too.
We did. And rec fees have been higher in actuality this year. This year, back to it, and they've had a lot of activity. It's a little risky when you start. It's better to see a year where the fees went up and you can say, okay, can we conceivably hold that? Then for the next year, we'll budget what the previous year's revenue was if we feel it was realistic. Like we didn't even, sales tax has been 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, and we just increased it for the revenue projection to 5.5. We don't want to go up to 6 saying, well, it's going to hit 6 next year. You want to actually see it before you budget it. Other municipalities close by do tend to hope, and we're not really, that's not the conservative way to do it. So we did go up in sales tax revenue, but we've been over that number for 3 straight years, and there's a good chance we'll hold that. So I mean, it might go down, but after you see a comfortable margin and you realize that it's probably going to stay, then we budget up close to it, but still give room for a decrease.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I was asked about the change in our structure for resident veterans.
Right, that's gonna
Resident
change, that's gonna
veterans,
change the percentage, but
Cold
not our
War.
taxes, so, in the end, it's the senior exemptions will actually change. That's gonna lower our levy, the veterans not so much. But in the end, that's just shuffling, you're taking the dollar bill from you and handing it to the veterans. So we have 6,000 properties, we have 500 veteran properties. So the spreading that cost out is much reduced than the other 5,500 properties. But with the reval and the commercial properties hopefully going up, I think you'll still see benefits to everybody, and it was just kind of smooth it out to the veterans to bring it up to the county levels.
Next one.
But it won't actually change the tax rate.
Of
What we
commercial
found
properties too. There's another 6 million that they have now, plus more with Kruba, finalizing things and Spalding.
And that'd be a big offset to residential. I do have one question, if I could ask Mandy, unrelated to the budget, but just based on it. You already know, is it in regards to the
Yes.
bandstand? Yeah, and Jen explained a little bit, it has to do with some
Yeah, so she's familiar
reconstructing.
because
Yeah.
we did, she helped us with some of the gardens or whatever, so they, everything needed to be revamped down there, the garden beds, the 4x4s or the railroad ties that were used were all rounded out. And the cost of lumber is astronomical, so it would cost me close to $6,000 in lumber, and it cost me less than $1,500 in concrete.
Sure.
So that's for, we did new sidewalks, and then there was a part of the stage that was the old Trex decking, which is great, it lasts forever, except that when they put it in, they didn't replace, and this was for me, the wood that was underneath. That's where all the rats were and stuff too. So we took that out and we concreted that as well. So the extension of the stage that was there previously, that was Trex, we did that in concrete. And then we will be building out a garden out front as well. So
Cool.
Just cost alone, we're a third of the cost to do concrete than compared to what lumber was. Less maintenance, that's the main goal.
Cool. But there'll still be some gardens around there.
There'll be a garden, yeah, definitely in front, so
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yes, and then the rat goes to the.
They swam to the end.
This way.
I have no questions.
This is that.
Same.
All right, so I guess we'll stand in recess for the next 30 minutes. or so.
Oh,
Thank you.
Do you want to take us off record?
I'm gonna be pausing the recording at this time.
Me. Of efficiency, we'll get started with. Maybe.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having. You guys have all seen the budget, right? There's really not, there's small additions here and there. But nothing's gonna jump off the paper at you individually besides obviously the salary line for 7020, so. Outside of that, does anyone have any questions about anything else? Because I'll get into that more in depth, but. The other line, there's an addition of salaries for like the pool, because there was another shift. They needed another lifeguard during like adult swim or whatever that the county's asking us to have. Nothing real big there. Senior center. Not much of a big jump, just additional programming and Wi-Fi basically. And so is there any questions outside the main question?
I don't think so at this moment.
Just, you know what, I do have a couple, I mean, I don't want to
Sure.
cut you off.
No.
First fields.
Oh, please do.
You've got a lot of line items.
I do
So,
have a lot of items.
So I mean, just going through them, and again, if there's,
No,
it almost
please
just,
ask,
sometimes there's some duplication in different lines. I mean, you got arts and crafts and three different
budget
sections.
lines,
Yeah,
yes.
three
So,
different
well, I
budget
mean,
lines.
there's pool and
Not
stuff.
that They
so
want to
that's-
deny people arts and crafts, but
No, I am honestly like. It's always kind of been a question, but there's recreation something, there's. Parks is always, the pool is always different than some of the other rec programs or whatever, and senior center, it's just called that, and it's kind of used for a little bit of everything. Me and Bill had actually talked to him, like, can you rename things, or is there other things that are better, a better title for some of the things?
yeah,
Like just activities, supplies, or something like that, so it's a little bit not just, so arts and crafts or whatever, it's kind of programming supplies of, type thing or whatever, but,
but it encompasses a lot more. And I think we had that conversation
Yes.
the last time, just for the benefit of people asking the questions.
Yep.
So
like I did add some money in the capital of 7020, for my playground group that wanted to see some projects. I think it went down to 12. After meeting with the mayor. But that will serve to hopefully get their wish list items in sometime next year. So that's an addition, there was a $12,000 addition there. I have office in both places, because it's kind of two different things. I have
parks, which is really like maintenance and overseeing that stuff, and then recreation is really your programming and things like that. So you have offices in all three places, so, you know, I don't know what the best way of handling it is of making it one big, you know, pot, but this works for me at this point, but nothing's really different. I had bumped up some numbers in like maintenance because you're starting to see that, you know, I haven't been able to get a truck in the last 3 years. I have two hoping to be ordered soon that were supposed to, I think, from 2020 and one from 2021, I believe. So you're just starting to see a little bit more maintenance on vehicles and equipment. So those lines, and you know, I'm always pushing the limit of that. Some years are over, some years are a little under.
Sure.
Athletic equipment, everything's just costing more.
Something or two of the youth pantry, there was a reduction.
So when I started, it used to be kind of like an in and out account that we used to like, that used to be like our after school funds would go into that. And then that's what we used to also like fund that program and buy food and snacks and things like that for that. And then it moved into, we were in charge of all the pop machines at one point in the city. And that became a big part of the budget. I got away from that because that was just not what we should be doing, is filling the pop machines. But it's still, it's a lot of the snacks, so a lot of the food items, even the things that, at least in the future, I want to, like, when we're purchasing things for the senior center, like we fund a big portion of their Christmas party food. And instead of taking that out of arts and crafts, because that's where it would come out of, our office, out of the senior budget, that's where it should come out of, it's like pantry, because they're part of recreation as well, so it should be all encompassing. It was just done differently in the past.
So it's kind of almost a holding line and a
Yes.
little more of a miscellaneous.
Yeah.
But I mean, it did go down from last year.
Yes.
So that was my question is the youth pantry responding?
Because we haven't
Food to
used that
kids in
much.
needs and. are we
No,
dropping
I'm
that?
not taking food out of anyone's mouth or anything. This should totally, we haven't used enough a lot since we got rid of the pop thing several years ago, and I kind of maintained it, but I knew that because we haven't used that much in a long time, if you see like, well, I mean, it's hard to look at COVID years, but even prior to that, we weren't
Sure.
hitting that number, so I could afford to take a little off there. There was some out of 71802, like I took it out of office. I put additions in the 7020, the MyRec system. It's not just a cool thing anymore. It's all of our recreation programs that are available online. So I kind of did that in the main recreation one. You see a little bit of money moving around there.
And I don't mean to be hogging this. My other question too, just looking back, I know, and this might tie more into salary, and I know you're getting into that, but I know we did have trouble maintaining or keeping up with lawns and gardens and that's type
For
of thing
sure.
at the beginning of the year. And I'm just going back and looking at the old invoices. I know we contracted out. So those, about $8,000.
That's not
$11,000.
going to be in there. What happened, I had originally put money in the budget to have that contractor, and after further discussion with the union, they wanted it in their overtime. So my overtime budget increased significantly because I have not been able to have the seasonal staff in the last 3 years. I mean, COVID, it was eliminated the first year. The next year, I got 2 people that worked 3 hours a week. This year, I had somebody that kicked off my season, and then that's it. So I have, a chunk of money still set aside in seasonal for those people, but even the things that we've added in the last couple of years, even those 2 seasonal employees that are generally retirees or whatever that are working, the amount of work, the things that we've added, if we look at just even Canal Street and the top of Gateway, like all those new gardening stuff, they need professional attention. I'm very nervous about the fact that we don't have a professional contract because the union thinks they can do it. So we're gonna, I guess, force our hand and let them do it. I don't know when they're gonna do it because we don't have enough time to keep up with the grass or anything, but so to be completely honest, I'm nervous the heck of that because I can't see things looking too differently. But it is what it is, and we'll see what we can do.
I mean, from my side, I mean, the idea of having contractors being able to get to it early in the year is a great
Yes.
idea, but it comes down to a union issue that it's a grievance issue that the work is there. that they should be doing.
Yes. In the end, yes, even though it was seasonal workers that were taking care of that stuff all along. But yeah, so we'll, again, so I bumped up my overtime to account for that, what was going to be like a, so I think I had 35 or $40,000, which is those 2 seasonal positions. So I was planning on keeping one of those to basically just water and doing this landscaping thing, so, that thing goes, so my overtime went up, I think like 17 grand or something to account for the difference. And we'll have to see if we can do it on our own.
So this, looking at line 412, the trees, flowers and seeds, 40,000.
Yep.
I know the mayor had discussed kind of modeling a program here with flower beds like they're doing in North Tonawanda. Is that coming from this 40 or is that
So I can,
something different?
for the flowers and stuff, we had talked back and forth and he, about the planters, and it sounded like he was gonna take care of the planters. I can handle the flowers, again, but hopefully, that's one of the easy things I can find someone to do is basically get Main Street planted and just watering it 3 times a week.
Mhm.
I mean, that's my goal. That's what I want to see. I didn't want to put planters out at all this year because I knew what they were gonna look like because I knew we
Right.
couldn't maintain them. But I have the flower portion of it and the seasonal maintenance of it. I don't have the actual planters.
Dave?
Yeah.
The plan was to use capital to buy the planters and then have the people rent the planters and that would pay for the planters over time and the gardens. So that was supposed to be a net zero, so we did not put that into the budget.
Okay.
For Mandy, we didn't make that one of her problems. But the plan, obviously, the staffing to water those, there's some talk on that. That will be with the unions again and the watering people, but the actual upfront cost of the large concrete planters like NT has, we're gonna be capital was the plan, and then pay that capital back with paying sponsorship.
I thought the businesses were gonna be the ones who maintain the planters.
We tried that 3 years
I-
ago.
All
it
of this
never
has been tried. So, and honestly, the actual planters have been on my agenda in budget talks for the last probably 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was always a pocket of money somewhere, but it never ended up, like at one point I had $90,000 for Main Street and that's what it was gonna go for, was that and benches and things, and it never came to fruition. We're at that point where like our planters, we only had 4 or 5 that we could rebuild enough to make it last this season. So we're at a point that, you know, depending on if that money comes through, we might go a year without flowers. And as much as I would love to see that or whatever, it might take a year then to really get our ducks in order, getting the sponsorship program with our merchants and stuff in place. With merchants and businesses so that we can do it and do it right. But yeah, everything else is on my end, just the planters were coming from the mayor's office program.
About how many, I know you said, but you could ballpark, about how many trees have to be replaced this year?
I'm replacing, but I don't want to say replacing, because I usually plant more than we take out.
Yeah.
Generally, we take out 70 to 100. This last year was a lot lower because I didn't have a tree guy for 9 months. But we still took out significant, but I'm planning 100 and like between 160 and 165 next week. So that's big. So about $15,000 I spent. I think we added that a couple of years ago in that budget line to make sure, because I was only having like $1,000 or $2,000 left at the end of the year to do it. And so we will be getting 150 trees basically every year.
Has there been any discussion about replacing the ones as you come into the city, like military there that always die from the salt?
So
or
always
building
die
that
from
up, or-
I can look again this year again. I think we replanted 8 or 12 of them. And
Mhm.
this is, I probably redone that 6 or 7 times.
Oh, I know.
So I will try again. Maybe I'll do, because of timing, we've only done a fall planting the last couple of years. Maybe I'll try and do those in the spring and see if they can. It's really funny how one side of the street has been way more successful than
Oh,
the
yeah.
other. And I don't know what it is that people are more stalled out and more emissions, or so, I don't have no idea on that side of the street, but I will, we can.
Maybe it's worth it to not do it. You know what I mean? It's like,
And there was other projects that were supposed to be happening too. We talked about like, some of the area landscapers that were gonna volunteer to do some gardens at our
Right.
entrances and even they got too busy, so.
Yeah.
When
So-
that, I wasn't a part of that grant, but when that whole thing was done, like even the beds or whatever, you put mulch in them, if it rains, like it goes everywhere, like it's
right.
it's.
So
I
maybe
wouldn't say It
instead
wasn't
of,
done well, like it's, the corner's a mess and.
is it worth it to just not do it? This is the question, because it seems like we keep putting trees in there and they die. It's, you know, that,
I rather like, I guess maybe we put like more planters, because I know how
Right, right.
difficult it is to maintain, but like, that would probably work better there if you had to build up around
Something
those squares or
seasonal,
something, or just not do them on that side and figure something out. I know it's a very industrial looking part of the city and we, you wanna,
soften it up.
yes. But it's been very difficult to get anything to take. I consulted with 2 or 3 artists over the years because we tried a different kind at one point or two because they're all pairs and it's not working.
Yeah.
And we don't really have the help of those businesses even cleaning up their front area too, so it's a constant maintenance thing. We have dug out those holes twice because of like thinking it's a soil issue, doing things or whatever in it and it just hasn't.
Be more ideal place for a welcome to see the town, honestly.
There's
A public sculpture.
something,
Yeah.
art, maybe we
Yeah.
can do art sculptures along there or something. I think maybe it's time to think outside the box or whatever,
Something
because
not
it's,
living. Yeah.
the
That
weeds are
won't-
constant there in those beds. The weeds are uncontrollable in those beds. When we get a chance, Chris is spraying 3-4 times a year and he doesn't really have that opportunity to that kind of maintenance in areas and it's an entrance to the city. I get it. I hate to see it too, but I'm out of ideas, but open to ideas as well too. We need to figure something out.
I think, I personally would rather,
Not seeing the dead ones there.
yeah, I mean, just cut our losses, all right? Something's not gonna grow here, let's figure something else out and invest that way, rather than continual
Right.
planting investment.
I know it's one of those touchy subjects, though. It's a Facebook thing. It's you know what I mean? Everyone draws attention to it and they want to see it, so a lot of
Just
times
put
we jump
Facebook.
to do it and it's easier to spend,
Work it,
so.
but it's an entrance, right?
And absolutely. And I don't know if there could be, that whole entrance was funding originally when they did all the brickwork and the tree cutouts. And I don't know how those things, because I know grants a lot of times, like you can't touch or change the area for so long or whatever. When you have things, but
Would you need if we could partner with the school district and have the kids do a sculpture project or something?
like I said, I think you're on the right track. Maybe it's a think outside the box.
We've tried 3 different types of tree and they subsequently, each one of them died. There's a lot of different tree varieties, but it just seems like that's a bad spot.
It's
It's not a tree that thrives off of diesel fumes.
right.
Mandy, can you explain what the 17,000 in the seasonal events goes to?
So that's all your concerts.
So like the Gateway concert?
No, your banjo concerts, I'm trying to think what else. I think actually some of my field trips and things like that come out of it for camp. But it's mainly in my other events. So even Hearts of Fun and Harbor come out of there. Some of my Christmas lights for our Christmas event, the lighting of the park comes out of that. Easter egg hunt things, all special events that we do. But a huge portion of it is the concerts at Sunday night and at the band shop. And originally I had put a few, it went down to, they kept it the same. I was looking for a few more dollars just because of the interest of wanting to do additional things at the new pavilion. Although we did book it up pretty good with a few different things last year. But we'll see what we can do with the same amount next year.
So the money that you collect from like the basket raffles, like Fall Fest.
So
where does-
that's a separate account. There's a trust and agency account that is Fall Fest.
So what do you use the money for the trust and
So
agency for?
it's called the park improvement fund. So we've done the safety fencing up at the park. We've done the walkways up at the park. We did the new shelter up at the park. So some bigger projects that maybe we normally can't fund on my normal budget. We've done that, replacing equipment.
How much is in that line, do you know?
There's probably about 40,000 or something in it.
So in theory, if the playground committee came back with additional funding requests, is that trust and agency count already spoken for, or?
I guess not completely, but I wouldn't be giving $40,000 for playgrounds. Like we're redoing the volleyball court, we're doing the drainage this year, so I don't know what's gonna be left at the end of the year, but there's always maintenance projects in those parks and stuff that we've added.
But you've allocated funding to address some of the wish lists already.
That's the entire wish
Specifically, yeah.
list that they gave me, so.
Yes.
Can we take conversations out in the hallway? Can we just, we have to talk about in the hallway, please? So did you allocate the money
The money that,
for
yeah, yes, which is in
the volleyball court? That's in the trust and agency, that's already spoken for.
yeah, whatever I can't get out of my regular budget, it'll come out of that. Those are additional improvements. We did the roof on the shanty up there. We've done a lot of projects over the year. We've done updates in the bathrooms. Even getting additional mulch and things that we needed for playgrounds. As things definitely come up, there's big maintenance issues that come up and, or things that we'd like to do that normally can't be covered in the budget, so that really opportunity in our parks.
Other questions?
Any other questions on any other lines? Because I would just like to comment about the salary line, obviously. So most of that is, contractual raises in the overtime that I spoke of earlier. There was a maintenance position added last year, so that had to be accounted for in this year's budget. There are additional camp counselors because our summer camp has been absolutely phenomenal. We maxed out basically most weeks this year. I can imagine us maxing out. We have 40 kids. That's going to bring us $72,000 in a matter of 9 weeks in revenue. So that's huge for us. So allotted for a few additional camp counselors to address that need. And then the main thing is basically the addition of recreational professional and another Kelly, if you will. As you guys know, like that, it's been about 18 months since we moved Kelly over there. It's not a coincidence that things have absolutely thrived over there since then. The membership has risen significantly. When we first made that move, it made sense and it was an easy move because there was a handful of people walking in the door every day. That is no longer the case. Our recreation programs, our senior programs there are just really thriving. So if we want to continue that forward motion, what we sincerely need is the addition of a qualified recreational professional, someone who's trained for this, someone who understands programming, that we can continue to build on the momentum we have. Our goal is, I know we've spoken this all year, you guys know that, I know you guys believe in the seniors for sure, and recreation has gotten some support over last year. But we want that center to be available to everybody and to be open every day, probably at like 12 hours a day.
What would that job spec look like?
It would look like Kelly's. So Kelly specifically says like she's responsible for specific things like the pool and playgrounds and youth center, and then takes on other responsibilities as needed or other facilities. This one will basically mirror that. Maybe this will be the senior portion or adult activities instead of just the youth activities. But they really will work in conjunction with one another. They can cover for each other. They'll just bring the additional programming knowledge and that recreation knowledge to it. And like I said, I can see that place being open. It would be a different shift so that that person can be, if we can have it open from 9 to 8 or whatever daily, so that everybody has access to it, we can continue to grow. And I just think that's what, you have seen the need for that in the last couple of years, especially coming off of COVID. And I think that's something that our residents want, and it's something they need, so.
So that was kind of my question. How would you staff it? Because the 2 seasonal workers that you have there now, those positions would be eliminated for this full time.
Correct. I mean,
So
we're
how
still gonna
would
have
you staff?
seasonals that are gonna help with programming, right? But these are the people that are really functioning and creating the programs, but I can imagine, I mean, Kelly already works, it's not a 9 to 5, there's, many times it is, but she has programming that she's gonna be responsible for on Monday nights, she does Start Smart, and she does some gym nights. So this one will also have those, I think this will be, like I said, probably a different shift, or they'll split a different shift so that we can have coverage throughout the week. They may not be there the whole time, every time, because there's definitely seasonal workers that run some of our programs, but this will, they'll have the ability to do a lot of the coverage themselves.
So you haven't mapped out a schedule for this additional,
I'm hoping on like a 12 to 8. But I don't want to say that it's only going to be that person 12 to 8. Kelly, like I said, Kelly functions, there's times where our programming doesn't happen in that building as well. Like Kelly goes to the schools and we use their gyms for things. So there's going to be programming that's outside the building. But that's what I'm envisioning is a different shift for them.
Any chance of this person maybe running an after-school care program, like you're talking about like the summer daycare program at Kohler? Is there any chance that this person can do something?
So we have an after-school program. We do currently. We have 20 kids in it.
Okay.
And we make revenue from that. So Kelly right now is also responsible for that. It's too much for one person. It really was when we envisioned it, we made this transition and change. It was something we could handle, something she could handle, because the center looked very differently a couple of years ago. And because we're able to utilize it way more and provide way more services and programs for people, the need is absolutely there to have another person. I would say another Kelly, another senior recreation leader. I envision it being, it's on the same level. We're not looking at different levels, the same level as Kelly. But you see, like NT has somebody who is in charge of like adult recreation programs, and then they have a youth service provider. Is there going to be overlap? Absolutely. But it gives you the coverage you need, because that's kind of what the seasonal worker was right now. Like when, we needed coverage over the summer, and we needed some for like Kelly's vacation time, and just to give her time to be able to plan. It's been so overwhelmed that she's so wrapped up in all the things going on in the senior center, she doesn't get to actually do, a lot of her programming. This position will provide that.
so in your words, in order to keep the wheels in motion, are
Absolutely.
you looking for someone that specializes in geriatric care, or what?
So it's specializes in
idea?
recreation.
Okay.
And yes, I mean, those things would be a bonus. And I think it's going to be very fluid. The things are responsible. There's some things with the seniors that Kelly's not going to give up or whatever. We're going to see what the responsibilities are, but it absolutely warrants that there needs to be another position. And I don't mean to say we can hammer out the specifics of who's doing what and whatever, like, she may not do softball anymore and this person might be softball. And
But this is a conscious decision that I think was discussed to not fill the senior citizens director, but to,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And like I said, it's really about the knowledge, the education that comes with the recreation background, and that'll help. And yes, I think this position will be more geared towards our adults, but it's going to be fluid.
So the 2 seasonal positions that you have covering this role now, those positions will be eliminated until seasonal.
Well, so we only asked for them to be in like this, it was a temporary fix to cover that's what it was intended from the beginning, was a temporary fix to help her over the summer and get her through the end of the year. Depending on how budget things go, like, we may warrant that, because it can't continue to work the way it is, because Kelly can't handle the amount of workload that's there.
And are you saying
But
that,
aren't those, sorry, but
No.
aren't those two seasonal, picking up for the additional work from
I don't-
Kelly?
I don't think they're really able to do like really the
Programming,
the professional background, the programming and that stuff. Are they there and great when they're there? Absolutely. But I think it's the professional qualifications that are needed.
So it's not a matter of training, you're looking for something more professional.
It, like, if you look at the civil service positions and what the job specs require in education, yeah.
you said the 20 kids in daycare, is that at Kohler or is that at the senior center?
At center, so Kohler is strictly at, and everything would still be based out of that center. So we're not going back to Kohler, Kohler's still gonna be seasonal. Both of those people would work out of that center, like I said, hand in hand. So there'd be a lot of fluidity to what they'd be responsible for, but yeah, we're staying there, so the kids come after school, there is some overlapping of time or whatever, which is great. But it's too much right now, so.
And my other question is Kelly's background education in that professional level of senior activities of recreation?
Yes, I think it's recreation done. I mean, our job is recreation for everybody. It's nice to, always stay abreast and train yourself and get education credits or whatever to learn more knowledge or whatever, especially maybe in a specific area. And maybe that's something that somebody else will bring to the table. But again, I think that the actual recreation portion, that professional education is the piece that's needed.
And is that, so you're bringing in somebody that has that education that's lacking, or I guess that's what, because it looks
So
like.
this is a
it's an
seasonal
equal-
position. I don't mean to say it's really it's no different than my lifeguards right now. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And my after school staff or whatever. Are they adults doing it? Yes, but I mean, I have adults in my parks and whatever. It's no different than them covering the center. What we need is somebody to, like I said, to create the programs and keep this forward motion going.
But I'm gonna ask, in addition to what Kelly's doing right now.
It sounds like it's just a second senior rec
Right.
leader. It's
It warrants-
identical, it's the exact position, it's someone equally trained.
They're just gonna be, like I said, hers says specific area and this one will say specific area as well. So they're gonna have, absolute things that they're responsible for, but there's gonna be a lot of fluidity as well, so. Which is what we need.
So Mandy, I don't mean to go back to the trust and agency account, but I'm trying to scratch my head over this. So we have $40,000 in the account. Approximately,
Something like
for
that.
sake of an argument.
Sure.
Who approves the expenditures out of that account? Because the council doesn't.
I always,
Not part of the budget.
It's not part of,
right, so when I need to do a project, I do the project. When I find something I need to do and I can't do it out of my regular budget, I've used it for that. So it's not, you're right, it's not out of the regular budget, so.
so you could say, I want to use $10,000 to repave or repair the volleyball court.
Right.
But the council might say, we want to use that $10,000 for playground equipment. Where's the,
Like I said, my responsibility as a department head is to get things done in my parks and stuff. So that's the job I've been given and those are the things to take care of. I don't know what.
so you say to the treasurer, I'm gonna use $10,000 for the playground equipment, we're gonna take it out of the trust and agency account.
I usually do what I need to do and I hand in my bills that go through that go against that account.
With the mayor's approval.
Right.
She still has a box. So in the past, I've been instructed in the mayor's office by Andy where we fixed the playground at I-3rd Eastern Park. We put $10,000 that needed to fix that grant that came out of the Veterans Park Improvement Fund. We used money for the IOU playground up by the pavilion. And then again, the mayor, this year, the mayor's been involved also in that with Danny.
I mean, he knows my day, so we talk about projects that are
So you-
happening and
You have an accounting of what goes into the trust and agency and what goes out.
Right.
Is my question. Okay.
Does anybody else have any other additional questions?
Just circling back a little more on the actual parks and maintenance, stuff like that. I know you talked about less seasonal workers, so that you have funded enough. The workers, the full-time workers that you have in your union and have problem with contracting it out. So do you have enough of those people? I know you become your own department head. There was a point when you were able to pull people from.
I
from
think we still do
DPW.
that
Is
when we
still
need, I
happening?
mean,
And is that where that extra help is coming from? Can you designate people to do that job? Do you have?
not there on regular time. We don't, so it's,
But you weren't able
it's
to do
going to
that
be,
before.
I wasn't able to do it
Yeah.
before, so it's
But I
gonna
mean, I
be a very
guess-
interesting year to see how they think they're gonna have time for this, because even when they say on overtime, there's usually 3-4 weeks straight that we are doing strict grass, every day available grass overtime, and that coincides with when you want your gardens done in the spring.
And I guess that's what I'm asking. Do you have a schedule of attack on it? I mean, I know summer hits, sometimes it's a little later, sometimes.
I mean,
it's
I
a
would
little
love for them
earlier.
to be able to get to hit the gardens before winter, but we
Right.
have, 3 or 4 projects going. We're doing now, we got room.
So you don't, I mean, you can't really have a baseline schedule of attack. I'm talking about, mowing the field, Elmwood Park getting done, trimming trees that need to be done. I mean, look around the whole city and there's definitely some, and you've spoken to the fact that it's because we have more park space, we have more green space that there's to maintain. But with what there is maintained, do you have enough people designated to you that you can actually schedule these things so you don't get into a position where we're looking at it's not getting done and everybody kind of comes down on you and
No, I don't believe we did.
no, and you don't have that because you're still sharing workers with DPW waiting for their availability, so you don't. have
I mean,
that.
that, if I grabbed somebody from DPW, it would strictly be like normally on overtime. I mean, we certainly, when a project comes up, we certainly share, like they just, we're doing a roof for them, for Joe, we're gonna be doing the roof for him all week, and they did they helped us out and did the cemetery pad for the shed.
Sure.
So there's times that, we have to work together. They have, they're responsible for the bigger equipment and, better how to use that. So we work together on things definitely, but I can utilize them overtime. It crushes my overtime budget because when you go out of department, they have to get paid out for it. Whereas most of my guys use comp time.
Did the addition of the one extra person, right? Do you need?
Absolutely helpful, yes.
Optimally, how many would you need to add?
Because
to
I
your
haven't thought about
full-time?
how many. So, I talked in the past 10 years ago, we had 10 seasonal workers that were just dedicated to grass and stuff that my full-time guys didn't have to do that work. I have 4 now. And
Is that because of staffing or because of budget?
I think it's been both. Impossible to get, I don't remember a year I could get more than 4 or 5. And then do not have the budget for it and on top of that. So, so things just look different. We are responsible for a whole lot and I don't think we're gonna be able to handle the
Right.
addition of.
And I guess that's what
landscaping.
I'm asking. So you can't, you don't have the ability to prioritize these things are getting done. And it circles back to the.
So
we talked about
I'm gonna-
before, You're talking about,
Rob the grass cutting crew to go out and do the gardens and then, we're gonna get complaints about grass and then
That's when you
we're gonna
got
put them
the-
on grass and then we're gonna get.
The
complaints
private
about grass.
contractors to do the grass.
But that
Not
got taken
anymore,
away.
that
Yeah.
happened.
That's something like, that's something my guys notably doing. I was a little frustrated with the landscaping portion because they never handled that before, but that's what it came down to, that it was a union issue. Even though I had, like I said, 2 seasonal workers who were the ones who maintain all the gardens. But we're gonna have to figure it out then. So they think they can do it and they want to do it. And that was the increase in overtime. So
that doesn't.
I-
mean, it just
doesn't make me
I
feel any
understand it's
better
not
either.
ideal.
It's not
we talked
ideal.
about the
I'm not-
visibility of our city.
Absolutely.
The parks, the areas, the recreation area.
absolutely.
There's no way to actually.
I don't like
prioritize that.
I don't like the post on Facebook and I get it. I have just as much pride in my position in the city.
I think there's
So
more
it's-
to it than just the post on Facebook. I mean, we live here, we're residents here, we have visitors coming in here,
So my,
regardless of what there's, I know.
and I have
said
pride
we-
for my position. So I am frustrated with the fact that I don't believe that's gonna be able to be accomplished. That it's gonna look any better this year. I put the things in place and got these contracts in place because I wanted to move forward and be able to handle that. that is no longer the case, so we're gonna have to see what we can do, and a lot is weather dependent, but that's a whole huge portion that they were never responsible for before, that they're saying they can do, so. My hands are tied with the union portion, so. It's frustrating. I don't want things to look the way they do.
Sure, I understand that, but is there utilizing more of the seasonal people? You know, the budget, salary and lines are always kind of in line. I mean, is there the ability to use more overtime for the seasonal employees to get done, or they just not have that availability?
I can't do overtime for seasonals. Seasonals can't do overtime. So that is just, you know, you're talking my 7 guys now, till it's only them, or I can reach out to, like, if my guys can't do it, I can, excuse me, go to DPW, but then I'm paying a mechanic significantly a lot more to
Yeah,
cut grass than
mechanic's
what I'm.
wage.
Right.
Is
So I mean,
there-
there's not a matter of changing job requirements or having somebody there to specifically do those jobs. Mowing the lawns, doing the gardening, even just, I mean, said it's the beginning of the spring, summer that, you know, the bulk of it that gets out
I
of
think,
control.
and someone said it earlier to me, I think people think like that's all we do is cut grass, whereas like we're really maintenance, so we're talking about all the facilities, and somewhere along the line, we also were in charge of like now everybody's facility. It's really supposed to be park facilities, so all the bathrooms, I mean, we probably get 2 or 3 repair requests a day because there's issues with toilets or whatever, so most of my full-time guys aren't cutting grass. They don't have the opportunity to cut grass because they're doing, you know, all the
City
maintenance work.
maintenance.
But, and I guess that's where I'm asking the question, we're talking about adding an additional Kelly to that budget. Are we not talking about adding an additional person for maintenance and landscaping? Are we prioritizing the recreational center over landscaping and lawn maintenance and that sort of thing? You said you haven't had this you've never had this. But is there a way to tackle it? Is there a way to come at it? I think we talked about it last year. I said we never really got the numbers. What would it look like to bring out another?
So we
person?
did bring on another one. I haven't had him for a full year yet. I just know the amount of work and the understanding of really what Parks is responsible for and the maintenance, and then it's not just grass. So, you know, those are things people see. So those are things we have to jump at, but you're not saying that we, you know, replaced 9 toilet seats in a week last year, or that the door at Eastern
Eastern Park got
Park,
busted in.
9 times the door's been kicked in.
Right.
That we are spending so much time doing things like that, you know, it's just, the landscape looks a lot different.
Would it be prudent to discuss not adding the person for the senior center and adding a person to do?
But where do you get,
It's in that
where does it?
I think it's different. I think it's almost like, you know,
Quality of life versus pretty flowers.
because you absolutely need both,
Mhm.
because we're not, Kelly's not going to survive in that role. And I just wholeheartedly don't believe it's something that, you know, like my seasonal workers should be taking on. That's a full professional position that needs to happen.
Are you seeing the effects of the labor shortage with your seasonal work?
For sure. So even Joe will say the same thing. In the last couple of years, COVID made it entirely worse. Like, you know, everybody that's on that sheet is hired or eliminated for one reason or another. Like,
I was gonna say,
I- you know.
remember talking with you about this, that we actually increased this, I believe, last year. And then you couldn't have enough, you didn't have enough people even applying.
right. I had enough budget for 5 seasonal laborers, and I only had 4. And I had
So,
2
my-
gardeners
my-
and never
my
got
real
any
question
gardeners.
is-
And
We have the infrastructure that needs to be taken care of.
We don't have the
So-
bodies.
It's
We
getting
don't
back.
have the body, so that's why I'm asking. That stuff is sitting in front of us, the parks, everything. The programming. Maybe we
But that's
reduce
it.
the
I
program.
see,
But
to me, that's just as important, that, you know, I have, you know, I have both hats or whatever, but that's just as important to me and for our residents or whatever. It's like, you know, like we were talking about splash pad and whatever, like it's important to have these amenities. And, you know, I'm a taxpayer or whatever too, and there needs to be things for our families to do. And, you know, we haven't supported recreation in a long time, so it's nice to see that recently we have, you know, There's grants and there's funding and you guys have supported them, but that needs this is the only growth have ever experienced. I've been here for 20 years now. We've never had any growth in the recreation side of it that needs to happen. You can see it clearly has happened in the last couple of years, but now we need to support that in a full-time position. And then there's the other side, of course, then I'm also in charge of that, but they are two separate things.
The next question was, and I think we've asked it in the health department, was and was that an ask that was in there that was something that was in place that was real bad because of budgetary concerns?
It was what, I'm sorry.
Was there the ask for employees to cover those, to cover these positions, to cover more landscaping people, more people full-time, that was rolled back in favor of something else, or just reduced because
Did
of
you ask for
budget?
anything that was taken out?
I mean, the contract was the big thing. But that, like I said, ended up being something the mayor agreed upon with the unions that were gonna basically force their hand in.
That money, so that money that would have been allocated to the contract,
There
is
was,
that gonna be,
there was supposed to be
Enough.
$25,000 in for professional services for that, and I think I got what my addition of overtime was. I think my overtime jumped like 17 grand or something like that to basically account for the work they think they're gonna be able to do on overtime. So,
Maybe can you share where your recruitment efforts are? Did you talk to the school? Do you talk?
we've made announcements in schools, we're very heavy on Facebook. Civil services helped and had us on Indeed, and what's the other one? Whatever the other like online job searches our most recent full-time position, like the tree trimmer. I mean, we went to every store that people would be purchasing tree equipment in and advertising or whatever.
Do we use the LED sign out front?
We say when like
Apply, not
applications.
hiring?
Mhm.
I don't know that we've asked that of any other department, though. I mean, every department's having the same type of labor shortage and attracting candidates. I know in my own business, my own work, we can't
totally.
get enough qualified people for any position.
Agree.
So I think if you find success doing that, please write the book.
And I know
because,
those
you know,
questions have been asked, but yeah,
Yeah.
every outlet that I can think of that, like I said, civil services has helped us or whatever because they're accepting a lot of applications. So she had it, I'm totally forgetting the name of the other site, but Indeed,
Like Monster, is that what,
it's not that, but
LinkedIn, things like that? Where you post it, and-
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, so
Search it,
it's,
Yeah.
basically.
if
Up
you
your
have other,
resume
I am
and
open to
just-
ideas. And we've had to, I don't think they ended up, even the gardening positions, I had a lot of interest. And no applications. A lot of people contacted, I probably had 6, 8 people contact me. And no one ever came through with the application.
Is there specific hours with that? Is it
I
something that's
mean,
like a
honestly,
day job,
it's supposed to
like
be 7 to 3, but I'm like, I'll take you anytime you want to work.
Yeah, I mean, it is something flexible enough. for you,
It can be flexible enough, but it's basically 40 hours a week. I think they were getting paid $16 an hour, 7 to 3, but nope. I don't want them last year, so.
Then we're in competition with everybody else who's looking for a $16 an hour. Sure. Minimal,
And that was huge
requirements.
last year, even bumping up to that, because I used to fight just to get us to minimum wage, and that's not cutting it. So, that was a decent bump for us to go to that. And I don't even know if it's about money anymore, to tell you the truth. Me and Joe talk about it all the time. I don't think if you had 20, I don't know if that's going to. The one position I used to always struggle with which was my lifeguards, and it was the only position I didn't struggle with this year.
Well, I don't think it's a fair assessment to say you had to fight to get them up to minimum wage because the council ultimately unanimously approved
It was always
the
a
increase.
lengthy process for me to get
Yes.
that, you know what I mean? It was usually after the season started that I got the approval to get it to minimum, because we do not have to pay minimum wage as a municipality.
Right.
So yes, it was something I garnered is as important, especially if we're gonna compete, and that's just harder and harder these days. And I don't know if it really has to do with money.
Like to Monica's point, there's a
It's
shortage everywhere.
I don't know where the workers went.
So would it be something to consider to put in an additional position?
Could you fill it?
Full-time, I mean, you're talking full-time benefits. I think that's a lot easier to fill than,
Seasonal or part-time? Just can't see the overtime, just rampant every time. It just eats up so much of the budget.
But
The
that's not so
taxpayers are
much
gonna
for
have to
Parks and Rec.
understand though, if
Your
this is
overtime's
what they
not.
want, if this is what they're doing.
so it's
You're
not
complaining
because my
about the
guys
look,
take it in
you're
account,
complaining
and
about
that's
no
why,
program,
because
you're gonna
I'm
have to pay
probably
for it.
far out that number every year, but they take it in account, so we don't see it.
And that's accounted for, it's just accounted for. by
Yes.
taking the
But
time.
when, yeah, but when they're
Would
not
one-
working,
Then
somebody
you're
else.
So
has to
do
work.
you think one full-time addition to
Would it make the huge
Would-
difference? I mean, it's certainly going to help, you know what I mean? The additional one, you're gonna see it help or whatever, but,
How many people does it mean? Do that?
I mean, specific to you.
in what, just maintenance? I
Say
assume,
maintenance Parks, right? I mean, when you're talking maintenance workers, are those maintenance workers fixing toilet seats, repairing bathrooms?
so I have 7
and they
maintenance
also-
workers, I have 2 tree trimmers, then I have Kelly and I have a account clerk, and then I have 40 to 50 seasonals.
those 7 people are
Are the
everything? They're
duo.
the grass
The general,
cutters,
yeah,
they're
the
everything.
hand-
The-
They're-
all the ball
That's what I was
fields, all
asking.
the,
Yep.
so it's 7 of them.
And your tree trimmers, do they get pulled off trees and jump in there
All
and
the
do that?
time.
Yeah. It's-
And are you short, I mean, fully staffed, or who's fully actively working, or are you running into any?
I mean, I have somebody out for a couple weeks with a surgery, but nothing that's been long-term or whatever, not in, well, I, like I said, we went about 9 months without really being able to do tree work. And I'm trying to think if we had a count. A year or 2 ago, we had somebody out count for probably almost a year.
So these, but when we're talking about the sharing of services, these are all specific to yours. On occasion, you pull some people from DPW in a pinch if needed.
Yeah, just projects that.
But
that
vice
need to
versa,
work.
does that happen too? Do your maintenance people get stolen by DPW?
Yeah, there's times that happens as well.
So the workload is increased because of the park space is increased, and also your membership at the senior center has increased. So the workload
are-
has.
I mean, these are all great
It's-
problems to
it's
have,
going
right?
this way.
The amount of things that force in the city, the amount of money that's come in the city in the last 10 years and the things that we've been able to do are astronomical. No one ever thinks about the maintenance of it. So that has not changed dramatically. And so you're asking the same people that didn't have a pavilion, didn't have a canal street, didn't have any of the rails to trails or whatever, and all these things. I mean, the pavilion is a full-time job. That work that even on my account clerk in the office, the amount of work that is, I mean, I do showings because it's a banquet facility. People want to see it. Who's gonna do that?
Just think, what do you think the possibility is if we reached out to the county, had them maybe discuss doing the lawns down at the river or something to kind of piggyback off that county property with, you know, bike path being county property, if we could sort of pull them in as a shared service.
I would love to think we could have those conversations, but with the way the union fought us on the landscaping that they weren't responsible for before. And fought us on that, there's no way they were going to take grass cutting away from them.
So, and I think that's the struggle that we've always had is we want to increase programming, we want to increase public safety, we want to increase
Absolutely. Everyone wants
garbage
a piece of the
collection,
pie, I get it.
everything. And all of that taken together under that umbrella is quality of life. But residents have to understand that there's a cost associated with that, and there's a continuing cost associated with that. So this is why I always say that this is, I hate this month. I hate budget because you're weighing what people want versus what they want to pay for. And there's not a big, it seems that there's a big disconnect between those two things. We want it all, but we don't want to pay for it.
I agree. I also, so at this point, I don't think there has been, like I said, I don't think recreation has asked for,
I'm not
Really
saying
much.
that is
no,
recreation, I'm saying
but that,
it's-
no, I'm saying that
umbrella
we
of the
really
city.
haven't experienced any growth or had the
Right.
opportunity, well, we've needed to, and we
Right.
haven't had that support. I know there's only, certain pieces of pipe, but I also know that recreation is a thing that most people will pay for, that they like to see. I know it's always usually the first thing they go, you saw during COVID or whatever, it's the first thing they go when the stuff really hits the fan, but it's what people want, and that is something people will pay for. If they can see the programs or whatever, they will pay for that. If they see a splash pad coming or whatever, they're gonna pay for the employee to be there.
And even to say, we're gonna bring this person on. That may not be a straight cost to the taxpayer, because they may be increasing program that brings
You're
in
gonna bring
revenue.
revenue. So, and let me speak to that on recreations we have too. We're the revenue generators, right? So my parks are revenue generating, my harbor is revenue generating, my programs are revenue generating, my pool generates revenue. All the things I'm responsible for are generating revenue, but we have to support that.
Well, then I think it's worth the discussion to talk about that person to help facilitate that extra work.
Gladly continue to have that conversation. I think,
Well, I think it would have to be between you and the mayor. And then bring it to us.
As far as those funding.
Discuss,
Ask for more.
discuss from funding, because again, you want a police officer and a fireman at every single corner, and something for the residents to do along, here. You want parks, you want parks, you want it to look nice, you want the garbage to pick up.
Well, it's not with that too. It's something we spend our entire lives not needing a
Yep.
policeman or a fireman. But every day we utilize our
Every day.
parks and rec. or DPW, as the
Yep.
chief said, things that aren't that sexy.
Yep.
But it's hard to invest in that.
It's hard for me to say too, because I know the way that costs are going up for everybody, just to bring home groceries, down to now say, guess what? It's gonna cost you more to live here too. There's a reval coming. It's a hard balance. And
I completely understand it.
it's a very hard balance to say to people who may have not had a raise in years, guess what? It's going up again. It's going up again. It's going up again. Or it's going up more than your raise at work is going up. And to have,
We all feel that.
it's an extremely hard position. And I think that's the hardest part about being on the council, is weighing that. What, with 4 people, there's 3 residents here tonight, 4 residents. Well, not people who don't work for the city. You know what I'm talking about? There's nobody online. And then when this tax goes, when they open up those tax bills in April, it's what happened. We've been here for months with hours of meetings. So we kind of have to err on the side of what do the residents truly want? And what do they want, what do they truly need? And I'd like to see it asked.
So to clarify a process, though, we're talking about adding a position. The council, we've already received the mayor's proposed budget. So if we decide to increase it 60,000 or whatever, we increase that line and we tell the mayor, this is where we collectively agree we want the money to go to. So, I just wanted to clarify.
So
So
it's
you
not a
can-
conversation
I mean, she can take it back to the mayor and say, I met with the council and now all of a sudden, instead of eliminating the 2 summer help, there's now a question of adding an additional person. That's a conversation that the council has to have to say, what's the cost to it? Are we going to increase the mayor's proposed budget by 60,000 or whatever the cost is? Or are we going to take from other lines that 60,000 and add 60,000 to the salary line?
We're already borrowing from the taxpayers to take $850,000 out of that.
All right, I agree. But now if the discussion is to add a position, what we would do, we either find the equivalent in any of the lines by cutting, or we add to the mayor's proposed budget, but keep in mind, you're probably gonna be over the tax cap if you do that.
Also, revenues have gone up on the rec side.
like you said, that summer camp alone, like, so I'm gonna bump fees up there at 175, which is nominal, and they have gone up to that. I'm gonna go to 200 next year, 200 with 40 kids every week is gonna bring $72,000 in 9 weeks. That's more than my
Gotta
harbor.
think about that too.
My harbor makes
Revenues-
half that, you know
revenues
what I
have
mean?
gone up As well.
My kids-
It's softened.
Sean helped pay for it, so.
Sean helped pay.
Thank you, Sean.
What, just to revisit one other part of it, and again, I just can't help looking at that side, but when we talk about availability, job descriptions, people available to fix bathrooms and stuff like that, you consider the management of those people. How much of this is something that can be addressed or should be addressed with contract negotiations with the unions? Is that something that we start talking about? Can they negotiate? Maybe we can do contracts on this sort of thing, and this isn't necessarily your job. You don't have the specialty to do the flower beds and the landscaping, or you don't have, toilet fixtures and maintenance and that aspect. Yes, people that are taking care of that. Is that something that could be negotiated with the contracts as well, and something we should make a push for as a council?
I mean,
If that's been part of your problem, is getting those people to do those jobs or to argue against those jobs.
it's against those jobs more, like that, they say they can do it all. It's the time of being able to do it. There's just too much.
Right.
That they're responsible for, so.
So what is, and I guess that's my question is, what is that answer from the union side? I know you're the department, you're not union. I'm not a union worker, and I know there's civil service rules and laws, but is that answer then, there's all this work that needs to be done? You
So
need to
they're
be
gonna-
paying us
they're
the
gonna-
overtime to be doing this?
Yes, and so they're, they wanted to show, which it's clearly showing, is that there's too much work and it warrants more employees. I mean, that's,
So that's,
I
so you're
mean,
getting
that's their
pushback
goal,
from the
and
union, that's
and
coming
like I
back
said,
to
that's
Okay.
what it's inevitably showing in my department anyways.
and that's what I'm trying to clarify,
Yes.
that it's not a want and need versus we're saying, no, we're not doing this. It's,
No, that it's just a,
gotcha.
So I have a thought. So last year we had the event at the pavilion where we had the department heads over the summer.
oh, okay, yeah.
Do you remember that?
The,
Like an open house thing.
Yeah, the open
with a-
house.
Yeah,
I think that's an opportunity for us to capitalize, promote the opportunities that we have. Come work for us here. Maybe we start that sooner. And that was a well-attended event. We invite civil service there. They have a table. They weren't there last for the open house. And, we continue to promote the event, and hopefully we are able to hire a couple people from there. But it's those events that we should be promoting. Come work for us,
Like a job fair.
like a job fair. We should be working with, the colleges, seeing if there's interns.
But again, the double-edged sword of that is, I'm gonna take Mandy or Kelly, who are already overwhelmed with their jobs already and busy, saying that you need more, take them away to organize another job. fair.
Well, that's why we have civil service.
and they,
That's-
like I said, they've
that's why
been
we-
really helpful, like, on the additional sites or whatever, and as much as I was putting it on Facebook and sites, they were doing it as well.
I
I,
think we
I'm,
all promoted it, your job would be less overwhelming or less stressful.
need something in the spring, that's the thing. I need to have it in February and March.
I agree.
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm open for suggestions of that.
Does that recruiting start this early?
it
would
starts
start
January
earlier?
1, you start, the apps can start coming in, because you have decisions made so people can hit the ground running in. early
Right, so they
January.
know too, you know what I mean? So my,
Yeah, you have seasonals in April,
My,
right? I know Joe does.
lifeguards know they're coming back to the job, my counselors know they're coming back to a job.
You mentioned something earlier, and you had said, you get taken away to go show the pavilion. How many hours a week do you devote to that?
I probably do showings once or twice a week, and they can be 15 minutes, or they can be an hour and some. Kelly does it sometimes as well, when I can't do it, so we're doing it. So it's weird things like that, like, I didn't know I was a banquet facility manager, and that's what that is kind of, it's not a picnic shelter where they just go. This is something that we're way more involved in. I'm scheduling all the cleaning of it, and so it's way more involved than people imagined it to be. The amount of, like, I mean, it's booked 250 plus days a year. It's a lot. And so then we're also keeping with that, trying to plan, like, you know, we have a couple days in a row coming up that we don't have parties, so my guys need to get in there. Time of year, they need to repair all the drywall and get things cleaned up, and but those are things that, you know, I never imagined what a huge, amazing monster that would have become. Because it's not just like a park shelter or whatever, the amount of work just for my clerk, the typist in my office is astronomical for that. Because you have people coming in constantly, they're bringing in the keys, they're collecting obviously a ton of money for that they're returning keys, and they have to talk to the custodian about, you know, if there's any damage. That has become a lot. Huge benefit, you know, it makes the city some decent money, but it's a lot. And I know it was, you know, thrown in recreation because it looks like a park shelter or whatever, you know what I mean? Like you think it's very easy that, but I don't know. Is that something that could be in the, I don't know, clerk's office or something? I don't know. It became a lot bigger and way more daunting than I think anyone ever imagined it to be.
Any additional questions?
Well, thank you for your ears. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy.
You know where to find me if you have additional questions.
You'll be
I'll
showing me.
be at the pavilion.
Pavilion showing.
She'll have a toilet seat around.
Isn't he still trying to fill one position?
Yeah, he has
Talked
no plumbing, he has no plumbing
Additional.
inspector.
about the plumber. So the
Yeah.
plumbing inspector.
Yeah, well, that's already in his budget. Thanks, Mandy.
I haven't asked him really, I don't think we've ever asked, so. Or I've asked. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mandy.
Your time.
Where do we go from here?
I say digest everything and
I think we need to go back. I'm circling the drain here. I'm circling the drain.
public hearing on first.
My question to that is in regard to the public hearing, so that's to present the mayor's budget that was presented to us and take questions on that. So any
Yeah.
changes we make, if we do make any, are going to be irrelevant to that. So
Correct.
we don't have to have a second hearing
No,
for the purpose of doing some of that.
we just have to adopt the budget at the second meeting in November, so November. whatever that date is.
So we have one for the hearing, but then to start talking about any changes we want to make and then have to adapt it the next.
Yes. Yep, so. Have a workshop on the 8th. We submit any amendments.
Madam President, just to let you know that that is election day.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Workshop the 7th. It'll be busy here.
Maybe we do a workshop after our regular meeting. So we don't have to make-
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, we could do a workshop
Following
second,
second.
third,
That's what it is.
whatever.
Can we start immediately changing the language on those meetings
think
to
we need to.
just say 6 o'clock, this starts, other thing immediately to
I'll-
follow?
I'll talk to the city attorney.
Okay,
I mean, I'm sure there's some verbiage we could use.
Very good.
We digest all this and.
So the 15th is the second.
Yeah, so this one you have to adopt the budget.
Can't foster it for a couple of weeks. try
I
to-
know, right?
That's straight on adopt.
You're going to have to have one more meeting.
did you see Foster?
Yeah.
I did.
So let's make a motion. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay. So motion to adjourn by Sean, second by Monica. Thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Already at this time, I'm going to be ending the Zoom call. Thank you for attending, and we have our council meeting next on November 1st.